2 nights before my son's wedding, I found out that his bride-to-be had slept with my husband. Inside me burned a fire of rage and injustice, but on the outside my face betrayed nothing but complete, calm stillness. Friends, before you settle in with your sweet tea and secondhand gossip, mash that subscribe button, because what I'm about to tell you rode shotgun with rage and injustice all the way to my son's wedding. Outwardly, I glided like Sunday morning. Inwardly, I burned hot enough to smelt sin. My name is Adele Rose Whitaker, 65, Charleston-born, Georgia-raised, and twice retired. Once from nursing, once from taking foolishness. 48 hours before my boy Caleb was to marry Miss Alyssa Monroe, life cracked like thunder. I'd run back to our lake house to fetch Caleb's childhood photo board when my phone buzzed with a message meant for someone else. Alyssa's girlfriend bragging about that wild rehearsal weekend with Mr. Whitaker. My stomach tightened. Mr. Whitaker is my husband, Leon Deacon and supposed pillar. I scrolled receipts. A selfie of Alyssa in my husband's flannel robe, time-stamped 2 a.m. Oh, voice memo. Leon's unmistakable baritone growling, "Can't wait till he calls me father-in-law." I thought my heart might rip its own veil, but anger can be artful. I decided right then the ceremony would proceed. The reckoning would wait until the gift exchange, wedding day. Spanish moss swayed above Magnolia Grove Chapel, white chairs lined like obedient soldiers. I walked down the aisle in midnight blue chiffon, chin lifted, smile stitched in silk thread. Guests whispered, "Sister Adele's aglow today." Oh, I was aglow all right, radiating kilowatts of betrayal they couldn't measure. At the altar, Leon stood stiff in charcoal tux. My gaze speared him. He flinched, eyelids trembling. Alyssa glanced over, mascara perfect but spirit uneasy. You can't powder over guilt's scent. Caleb, my sweet boy, radiated love so bright it stung. That spotlight of innocence fueled my resolve. No public spectacle to mar his vows, just a lesson for liars. The minister pronounced them husband and wife. To polite applause drowned by my private thunder, reception followed in the garden pavilion, twinkle lights strung like false promises. Champagne fizzed. My serenity never cracked. Leon tried to catch my eye. I offered a grandmotherly smile that chilled him colder than wedding gelato. Dinner melted into speech time. Best man joked, maid of honor cried. Caleb thanked us parents. I rose last, tapping my flute. "Family," I began, voice honeyed. "Gifts come from the heart. Tonight I have a special package." A hush drifted over linen-draped tables. Waiters rolled out one silver box, ribboned in sapphire, my favorite gemstone, Leon's birthstone, and now Alyssa's silent confession color. Leon swallowed. Alyssa licked her lips. Caleb beamed, expecting heirloom china. I continued. "Every marriage deserves a foundation of truth. Leon and Alyssa, please open this together, right now." Hands trembling, they lifted the lid. Inside lay a state-of-the-art lie detector, wires coiled atop notarized contracts titled Integrity Pledge. Guests gasped. Leon's face blanched. Alyssa's bouquet sagged. "I've pre-programmed 3 questions," I said, steady. "Caleb, you may ask them or we end this here and now." My son frowned, confusion blooming. Alyssa whispered, "No, please." Leon stammered, "Adele, not now." I raised a palm. Truth is always timely. Caleb, eyes darting, opened his mouth. Then the band struck an awkward chord. Desperate for distraction, I held up 2 fingers. The drummer hushed. Spotlights lingered on the silver box like judgment incarnate. Before Caleb could speak, I produced 2 sealed envelopes. "If you choose privacy," I told them, "open these later. One contains proof of infidelity. The other, directions to my attorney's office. Inside, a rewritten estate plan." Leon sagged. Alyssa inhaled a sob. I faced our guests. Marriage is holy ground, I announced. Some gifts weigh heavy because they are built from bedrock, not glitter. I raised my glass to blessings earned by honesty. Applause, confused, polite, fluttered like moth wings. Caleb wrapped an arm around Alyssa, whispering frantic questions. Leon retreated behind a pillar, sweat streaking his temples. I descended the stage, heart pounding but face calm as low tide. Dessert trays wheeled out. Conversations resumed. Though electricity crackled in every corner, my revenge wasn't scandalous. It was surgical. The seeds of truth were planted. Harvest would come. Friends, if you think that silver box closed the scandal, stay close. Next, hidden recordings spill. Leon confronts a lawyer more terrifying than his guilt, and Alyssa discovers annulment papers fit inside a bridal clutch. Hit that bell, because justice just RSVP'd and it's bringing receipts. I did not sleep the night of the wedding. Instead, I listened to cicadas saw through the magnolias while the silver box replayed itself behind my eyelids. At dawn, my phone buzzed. A single text from Alyssa. May we talk? I ignored it, pressed coffee grounds hard enough to crack the filter, and waited for the first aftershock. It arrived at 8:13 a.m. Caleb's number flashed. His voice quivered like a violin bow too tight. Mom, what's in those envelopes? Alyssa's been crying since we got to the hotel. I told him truth requires daylight. Meet me at the lake house. Bring your wife and father. They arrived before noon, garments from last night still smelling of champagne and nerves. Caleb's eyes were red-rimmed. Alyssa's mascara formed half moons. Leon looked as if he'd slept in a confession booth. I placed the envelopes on the kitchen island beside 3 chilled glasses of water. Silence thickened until Caleb tore the seal on the first. Out slid a USB drive labeled Doc 12 cameras. He plugged it into my laptop. Up popped security footage from the lake house guest wing. Leon in his robe, Alyssa entering with a giggle, time-stamped 2 nights before the ceremony. The clip ended as Leon reached for the bedside lamp. Caleb staggered as though someone yanked out his spine. Alyssa gasped. It was a mistake. I was drunk. He said you'd never find out. Leon muttered, Baby, don't. Wrong word. Caleb's fist met his father's jaw with a crack that echoed off cedar beams. Leon slumped, dazed but conscious. I slid forward the second envelope, estate documents stamped by Attorney Gray. This, I said, removes Leon from joint ownership of every marital asset and places my holdings, including the lake house, into an irrevocable trust for victims of clergy abuse. Leon clutched his swelling jaw. Alyssa paled. Caleb whispered, Mom, are you sure? I answered, Justice is mercy with backbone. Leon sputtered lawyer threats. I reminded him of the prenup's infidelity clause. 85% forfeiture. He demanded proof of signature. I produced the signed addendum he'd authorized in 2009. He'd skimmed it for golf that day. His shoulders sagged like wet canvas. Alyssa dropped to her knees, grasping Caleb's torn cuff. I love you. Your dad said he'd ruin the wedding otherwise. Caleb pulled away, shaking. I handed him a final folder. Annulment petition. Blank except for his name. You decide, I murmured, but choose before regret sets like concrete. He stared at the form, then at Alyssa. Tears slid. He walked outside, door slamming like a gavel. Leon followed, begging forgiveness, a ridiculous sight with one cheek ballooning. I poured Alyssa water. Her hands trembled. Why didn't you stop it? She whispered. Because your vows were yours to honor or break, I replied. I just exposed the ledger. Outside by the dock, Caleb shouted raw hurt, gulls scattered. Leon tried to justify claiming midlife crisis, bourbon fog. Caleb roared back, You were supposed to guide me, not betray me. Then he flung the annulment papers into the water, pages fluttering like wounded birds, and stalked to his car. Whether that meant reconciliation or refusal, only he knew. Leon returned, drenched in sweat, eyes glassy. Adele, you can't ruin me, he rasped. You did that yourself, I answered. I slid across the counter a business card. Attorney Gray's referral to a divorce mediator who specialized in public figure scandals. Your appointment is Friday. Show up sober, I said. He left without the card. I tucked it into my pocket. Within hours, gossip spread faster than kudzu. Tasha-style bridesmaids posted cryptic Insta stories, and church elders texted me praying emojis. I released a concise statement. The Whitaker family appreciates privacy as we pursue truth with grace. Pastor Daniel called an emergency deacon meeting. Leon did not attend. That night, Alyssa messaged again. Caleb hasn't spoken to me. I'm staying at my sister's. Tell me how to atone. I replied with one sentence. Confession is a door you open yourself. No response. I stood on the dock, moon rippling across water, annulment pages drifting past. I fished one out. Caleb's name blurred. The blank spouse line still crisp. Tomorrow he would decide if that line stayed empty or bore new ink. Either way, he'd write it without illusion. Sunday morning, Leon's usual seat on the pulpit platform sat empty. Only a single program left behind, fluttering in the AC like an embarrassed flag. Pastor Daniel cleared his throat, announced a season of quiet reflection, and prayed a sermon about wolves in shepherd's clothing. Congregants side-eyed one another, phones buzzing with whispers of lake house footage. By noon, the deacon board issued a statement placing Leon on indefinite disciplinary leave, pending an ethics investigation. I spent the afternoon boxing his suits. Every pocket yielded secrets, valet claim tickets, a monogrammed lighter, and, tucked in a breast pouch, the pawn slip for my grandmother's cameo brooch, sold 2 months earlier. I photographed everything, sealed the box, and labeled it Consequences, Return to Sender. A courier delivered it to Leon's motel before sundown. Caleb reappeared Monday with eyes like sleepless moons. He'd spent the night at a friend's boat shed, replaying betrayal frame by frame. Mom, my vows feel counterfeit, he said. I reminded him. Vows are promises, not receipts. One broken signature voids the contract. I offered the annulment form. He slid it into his jacket. That afternoon, an email pinged from Harper & Lowe LLP, Caleb's college roommate, now a junior partner, offering pro bono representation for marital fraud. Attached, a draft civil complaint. Alyssa Whitaker and Leon Whitaker named co-defendants. Cause: intentional infliction of emotional distress, fraud in the inducement, damages sought, reimbursement of wedding expenses, plus punitive relief in an amount to be determined. Caleb stared at the PDF like it was a life raft. File it, he whispered. News broke Tuesday. Local station airing blurred stills of the Lake House clip citing multiple sources. Church donations dipped. Parents yanked kids from Leon's youth mentorship program. An emergency elder's vote stripped him of deacon title and pension. Leon called me 15 times. I let each ring out like a funeral bell. Alyssa's sister, Marin, requested a meeting. For closure. We sat on the patio of a downtown cafe. Marin slid over Alyssa's phone, unlocked. She asked me to delete everything, Marin said. But you deserve truth. I scrolled. Voice messages of Leon begging Alyssa to keep our little rehearsal secret. Texts promising to sway Caleb into a bigger house if she stayed pliable. Worst was a selfie. Leon kissing Alyssa's shoulder, captioned father-in-law privileges. My breath nodded. Marin wiped tears, whispered, "She's hiding at my place, ashamed but still defending him." I copied the files, thanking her for courage. Wednesday, Leon's attorney served me a cease and desist alleging defamation and marital sabotage. Attorney Gray laughed so hard her pearls rattled. She filed a counter notice citing infidelity evidence, prenup clauses, and community revulsion. By evening, Leon's lawyer withdrew, noting irreconcilable ethical conflicts. Thursday's real thunder came from the courthouse clerk. Caleb's civil suit accepted and docketed. Local paper ran the headline, "Groom: Sues bride and father over pre-wedding affair." Online comment sections ignited, some condemning Caleb for airing dirty laundry, others crowning him hero. Alyssa released a shaky video apology, sunlight slanting across her tear-streaked face, claiming Leon groomed her, promising to cooperate. Views hit 50,000 in 2 hours. Sympathy tilted. Pastor Daniel phoned, voice heavy. Adele, an anonymous donor, has pledged funds for a victim support ministry. The board thinks it's you. I neither confirmed nor denied, only asked if the church would host Caleb's annulment hearing reception. Silence then. The fellowship hall is yours. Friday, a padded envelope arrived with no return address. Inside, a leather-bound journal titled Deacon Board, Minutes, Restricted. Pages documented complaints Leon buried, unwanted advances toward choir volunteers, suspicious counseling sessions. Whoever mailed it wrote one line on the inside cover, "Clean the sanctuary." I handed it to Attorney Gray. Her eyes flashed flint. "This, my dear, is Tinder." That night, Caleb, Marin, and I met in the lake house kitchen. Caleb signed annulment papers, final and neat. Marin slid over a memory card with the full, unedited lake house recordings, audio included. Caleb tucked it into an evidence envelope, sighing like a hinge released. We ate silence for dessert. As moonlight stitched silver across the dock, Caleb spoke. "Mom, after the lawsuit, after annulment, what's next?" I answered, "You rebuild with wood that doesn't warp in secret." He nodded, staring at the dark water where betrayal once fluttered. Saturday broke humid and heavy, as if the low country air itself anticipated a reckoning. By mid-morning, Deputy Marshal Hines knocked on my door, politely, hat in hand, but the badge gleamed with hard intent. "Ma'am, do you know the whereabouts of Leon Whitaker?" I pointed to the motel address scrawled on the cease and desist. Hines tipped his hat. "A grand jury indictment may land Monday. Fraud, coercion, possible clergy misconduct." The tinder in those deacon minutes had sparked a wildfire. News spread fast. Reporters camped outside Calvary First Church. Cameras angled toward a steeple that now felt more gallows than beacon. Pastor Daniel scheduled a congregational forum, half the pews filled with mourning, half with anger. The eldest usher, Mr. Coleman, quaked when he read aloud one complaint from the secret minutes. Leon had counseled a 19-year-old choir alto past midnight and paid her silence with $400 from the youth trip fund. Gasps sucked the sanctuary hollow. The board voted to open archives and cooperate fully with detectives. Sanctuary cleaning had begun. That afternoon, Caleb's attorney, Harper, met us at Gray & Associates. Attorney Gray pressed play on the unedited Lake House audio. Leon's voice flooded the conference room. "He'll never believe you'd want me if he thinks you're pure. We're just leveling the playing field." Alyssa's voice trembling. "Will it ruin the wedding?" Leon, "Only makes it hotter." Caleb flinched but held steady. Harper smiled thinly. Direct evidence of fraud and coercion. Discovery just became a slam dunk. Harper drafted an amendment. Punitive damages raised to $750,000 plus attorney fees. Alyssa's counsel requested mediation, her cooperation in criminal probe for reduced civil liability. Caleb considered, then nodded. Truth first, money second. Sunday, Alyssa walked into the sheriff's office flanked by Marin and a trauma counselor. She spilled everything. Leon started flirting months earlier, offered down payment money on a house if she'd soften his son's edges. He'd promised to keep it secret unless Caleb ever disrespected him, in which case he'd leak intimate photos to sabotage the wedding. Investigators recorded every word. By sunset, Leon's motel door splintered under a warrant. His mugshot hit social feeds, tux gone, hair disheveled, bruise still ghosting where Caleb's fist landed, charges, coercion, embezzlement, and obstruction. He'd shredded accounting spreadsheets at 3 a.m., motel laundry, bail denied. Caleb watched coverage alone at the lake house. I arrived with cedar planks and a toolbox. Time to rip out that rotten dock beam, I said. We pried boards. In silence, brackish water lapping like slow applause. Caleb broke first. I keep replaying it. Did I miss signs? I handed him a new plank smelling of fresh forest. Sometimes rot hides under paint. You found it before the whole pier collapsed. By dusk the dock stood stronger, cedar glowing in sunset blush. Caleb's shoulders seemed wider, spine straighter. He inhaled marsh air. Mom, I'm thinking of volunteering for habitat builds. Channel the anger. I smiled. Healing tastes like sawdust and salt. Monday grand jury indictment confirmed 5 felony counts against Leon. Pastor Daniel issued a video statement. We repent for sheltering sin, commit to transparency, and will fund counseling for survivors. Donations dipped, then rose. Wounded truth still draws tithes. Mediation day for the civil suit arrived in a courthouse conference wing humming with recycled air. Alyssa entered pale but resolute. She accepted full liability, signed affidavits for the criminal case, and agreed to pay symbolic $1 plus testify. Leon's frozen accounts would satisfy the remainder. Caleb extended a hand, not for reconciliation, but closure. Alyssa whispered, "Thank you for some place to start over." He nodded, eyes clear. Outside, reporters swarmed. Caleb read a prepared statement. Justice isn't revenge, it's restoration of balance. Today we start building again on level ground. Cameras clicked. Social media crowned him Groom of Steel. Weeks passed. Leon's trial date set for fall. He remained in county lockup, requesting pastoral visits no one fulfilled. Caleb joined Habitat's Saturday crew, hammer echoing across marsh flats. Alyssa moved in with Marin, began therapy, enrolled in nursing night classes. Irony not lost on any of us. One humid Friday, Caleb and I stood on the rebuilt dock. He drove the final screw into the cedar railing, stepped back. "Sturdy," he declared. Then he pulled from his pocket a slim leather box. Inside, a compass once belonging to my father. "For you," he said, "you kept us north." My throat tightened. I clasped the compass, its needle steady despite the breeze. September's dawn spread peach pink over the marsh, but the courthouse across town felt gray as wet ash. Leon Whitaker's trial for clergy coercion, embezzlement, and fraud had drawn TV vans, street corner preachers, and skeptics clutching cardboard verses like shields. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed while prospective jurors shuffled, avoiding the defendant's swollen gaze. Caleb and I sat 3 rows back, supporting witnesses, not spectators, flanked by Pastor Daniel and 2 choir altos who'd filed earlier complaints now turned evidence. Opening arguments set the tone. Prosecutor Ruiz described Leon as a shepherd who fleeced his flock and branded his own son's heart. Defense tried casting Alyssa as temptress, Leon as midlife fool, but Ruiz replayed the lake house audio. Jurors flinched, even the court reporter paused, mouth tight. Alyssa testified next, steady, voice cracking only when recounting Leon's threat to leak photos, the gallery murmured. Judge silenced them with a gavel crack like rifle fire. That afternoon, I returned to Pierce Place, head heavy. On-site habitat crew hammered rhythm into the humid air. Caleb stood atop a half-framed porch beside Ms. Hattie Briscoe, a widowed school bus driver finally getting a mortgage she could manage. Sweat glistened on Caleb's brow, but his smile held genuine sunrise. Ms. Hattie handed him a Sharpie to sign the beam. May every nail remember mercy. She asked about the trial. He inhaled, exhaled sawdust. Rebuilding's louder than scandal, he said. She patted his arm, replied, Baby houses don't ask if your hands are sad, only if they're steady. That evening, Ms. Hattie invited the volunteer crew to her rental for sweet tea thank yous. Porch rocking chairs wheezed as cicadas tuned up. She pointed to peeling paint. Cracked steps said, I learned something when my husband passed. Grief is a carpenter. Makes you see every loose board. Caleb nodded, eyes distant. She handed him her husband's worn leather work gloves. Carry forward, she said. His throat bobbed. Trial, day 2. Choir. Alto Denise Carter took the stand. Defense objected. Irrelevant timeline, but Ruiz linked Leon's past advances to pattern. Denise's voice shook, but did not break. He said confession could happen in private prayer with door locked. Gasps rolled like thunder. Judge admonished the gallery again. During recess, a reporter cornered Pastor Daniel. Has your faith wavered? He replied, Faith isn't a man. Faith is a compass, sometimes pointing straight into storms. Soundbite trended under Nauberg compass, not clergy. By midweek, defense knew the verdict wind. They pivoted to plea negotiations. Leon would plead guilty to 1 embezzlement count and 2 misdemeanors, register as nonviolent offender, repay $250,000 restitution. Ruiz countered, felony coercion stays or no deal. Leon's lawyer sought Caleb's support for leniency, claimed a public father-son reconciliation could soften sentencing. Caleb declined. Leniency without repentance is plywood in a hurricane, he said. Thursday night storms bogged the marsh in fog. Leon's plea fell apart. Trial raced to closing statements. Ruiz painted a tableau. A church ledger bleeding, a wedding altar corrupted, a community rebuilding without its false shepherd. Defense offered remorse too late, jury unmoved. Verdict Friday, 10 a.m. 8 hours deliberation. Courtroom packed shoulder to shoulder. Foreman stood, guilty on all counts. Leon's knees buckled. Bailiff steadied him. Sentencing set for November. Max could reach 12 years. Outside, protesters prayed, cameras spun, but Caleb and I slipped down side stairs into crisp sunlight that felt freshly laundered. We drove straight to the habitat site. Crew paused when Caleb climbed the ladder, brandished his hammer and said, Let's set the roof trusses. No speeches, nail guns chorused, wood scented the breeze more than salt. Late afternoon, trusses locked, Caleb stepped down, face streaked with cedar dust. I handed him Ms. Hattie's gloves, now broken into his palms. He exhaled. Each houseboard counters a lie, he whispered. I answered, keep building. Truth needs square footage. That night, Pastor Daniel convened a vigil on the church lawn, lamps glowing in mason jars. Survivors, congregants, even skeptics encircled the steps. Denise Carter sang, Great is thy faithfulness. Voice quivering but sure, Pastor read from Amos, Let justice roll down like waters, righteousness like a never-failing stream. Caleb dropped a cedar shaving into the jar by the pulpit, symbol that rebuilding had entered the sanctuary. At last. November draped its copper light over the marsh like forgiveness finally catching breath. Leon's sentencing hearing landed on the courthouse docket the same week Ms. Hattie's Habitat house was ready for keys, a collision of endings and beginnings that felt scripted by some higher carpenter. Sentencing day. We filed into Judge Garner's chamber. No cameras, just stenographer keys tapping like anxious rain. Leon shuffled in wearing county khaki, wrists chained to hope he'd long ago foreclosed. The prosecutor requested 10 years, citing breach of spiritual trust and financial predation. Defense begged for 5+ rehab, leaning on letters from distant cousins who hadn't watched the trial. Caleb offered a victim impact statement, voice even as planed cedar. Your Honor, my father taught me how to swing a hammer but forgot to teach why integrity is the nail. He didn't ask for vengeance, only for a sentence long enough for roots, not weeds, to grow. Gasps fluttered behind us. Judge Garner nodded, eyes flint. Before ruling, the judge surprised everyone. Mr. Whitaker, any last words? Leon cleared his throat, gaze fixed on the floor. I used to measure sermons by applause, he muttered. I'm ready to measure time by accountability. It was an apology, but at least it was weight. Verdict: 9 years state prison, eligibility for restorative justice program after 3, full restitution, and permanent removal from clerical office. Gavel struck, Leon sagged but did not collapse. As deputies led him away, he locked eyes with Caleb. No defiance, just a silent nod that felt maybe like the first honest nail he'd driven in decades. 2 days later, dawn rose blue as denim. Volunteers strung bunting along Miss Hattie's porch rail. Rochelle's stitchery squad tied blue heart ribbons to doorknobs. The smell of fresh-cut lumber mingled with tomato basil soup simmering in Pierce Place's industrial kitchen. Second Chance Stitchery now catered move-ins as part of their business plan. Ms. Hattie arrived carrying a battered lunch pail that had ridden every bus route she'd driven for 32 years. Tears blurred her glasses when Caleb handed her an oversized key-painted Cherokee purple tomato red. Mercy fits any lock, he said. Inside, sunlight spilled over the sharpied stud where Caleb's mantra still read, May every nail remember mercy. Ms. Hattie traced the words, then pressed both palms to the wall like blessing it from the inside out. Cameras from local news captured the moment. Anchors later called it Thanksgiving's preview, a letter that shifted north. That afternoon, Caleb found a plain envelope in the Habitat mailbox postmarked Raleigh, inside a single page. Dear Caleb, you rebuilt what I helped break. If you ever seek a fresh field, Habitat's Global Village project in Costa Rica needs site leaders. Your story crossed my desk through a volunteer newsletter. Applications close December 10th. E. Landon, International Director. Caleb read it twice, spine straightening like a board clamped true. Costa Rica, he whispered, rolling the syllables like marbles. I saw map lines ignite behind his eyes, pain turning into passport ink, bonfire of closure. That evening, Pierce Place hosted a post-move-in bonfire on the riverbank. Residents, tutors, choir survivors, all circled a blaze that crackled like pages turning. Rochelle passed out mugs of tomato bisque. Brett synced a playlist that blended worship chords with indie folk. Denise Carter delivered a soft acoustic rendition of Bridge Over Troubled Water. Tears glinted in torchlight. Toward the fire's peak, Caleb stepped forward, holding the last of the cedar shavings saved from dock repairs. This came from rot we ripped out, he said. Tonight it fuels warmth. He tossed the sliver into flames. Sparks spiraled skyward like tiny lighthouses. He then shared the letter, voice steady but eyes shining. Gasps turned into cheers, then contemplative silence. Pastor Daniel laid a hand on Caleb's shoulder. Bridges cross oceans, too, he said. I felt the compass in my pocket, Caleb's gift to me, vibrating almost, needle quivering north no matter how the river bent. I realized letting him go south to Costa Rica was, paradoxically, his true north. By week's end, Caleb submitted the application. References flew back within hours. Ms. Hattie, Pastor Daniel, even Judge Garner. Applicant demonstrates structural integrity of character. Rochelle offered to sew lightweight volunteer vests with blue heart patches for the Costa Rica crew. Malik Googled rainforest tomato varieties, eager to mail seeds labeled Quiet Lightning Tropic. Leon's transport bus pulled onto the interstate at dawn Monday. I watched from a distance, compass warm in my hand. I whispered, "Measure twice, repent daily," hoping steel bars might echo. December in Savannah usually creeps in like a polite guest. Light frost, cinnamon on the breeze, choir rehearsals floating from church windows. But this December burst through the door with a federal grant on its tongue and a suitcase full of possibility. Senator Aguirre's Peer Ladder Initiative, the $12 million line item Kira had lobbied for, was scheduled for a full House vote on December 20. That gave us 20 days to prove Pierce Place, Help Ladder, and Second Chance Stitchery weren't just feel-good headlines, but a replicable engine of redemption. The pressure felt like summer humidity in our bones. Rochelle set up an assembly queue in the old motel laundry room, 20 sewing machines clattering like hail on a tin roof. Second Chance Stitchery had landed a holiday contract for 300 Blue Heart aprons from a regional grocery chain that wanted hope in every aisle. Success, yes, but every late-night spool change reminded Rochelle of years she'd spent chasing quick fixes instead of quiet stitches. The patterns have to be perfect, she kept repeating, and her crew understood she meant more than seams. Kira, now knee-deep in finals and grant paperwork, commandeered the gazebo as her office. Laptops, staplers, and tomato print sticky notes blanketed the cedar floorboards. In the mornings, she video conferenced with community college coordinators in Alaska, Maine, and Puerto Rico. By lunch, she fielded calls from Zurich's Lazarus Foundation, who hinted at a matching donation if Congress passed the bill. Lena filmed everything for Courage Corner, narrating, "Coffee is Kira's love language, but policy memos are her dialect." Caleb, back from a week-long habitat intensive in Atlanta, arrived with sawdust in his beard and blueprints in his backpack. He'd been selected as provisional site leader for Global Village Costa Rica, pending final reference checks, and his grin carried the nervous voltage of someone fastening wings he'd never worn. I watched him step onto the porch with that mixture of pride and maternal ache. He greeted Rochelle with a mock salute, checked on Malik's seedlings, then headed for the workshop to finish the heart-shaped reading benches promised for Ms. Hattie's front yard. 3 days into the push, Deputy Secretary Marlon Reese from HUD arrived unannounced, wearing jeans and an expression that said he'd rather inspect drywall than pose for photos. We gave him the nickel tour anyway. Rochelle demonstrated how resident seamstresses clock piece rate hours through an app Kira's coder friends built. Malik walked him through the garden's winter greens rotation. Caleb showed the carpentry shed where parolees learned dovetail joints instead of jailhouse knots. Reese nodded infrequently but scribbled in a weather-beaten notebook. Before leaving, he said, "If half the nonprofits I audit ran this tight a ship, our homeless count would be lower. Keep receipts. Washington's coming." Then he drove off in a hybrid sedan like a plot twist exiting stage left. That evening, Kira gathered the core team in the gazebo, now strung with tomato-red fairy lights and smelling of cedar shavings. She unveiled the house counting clock, A giant poster board with 20 blank rectangles representing undecided representatives. Every time we secure a yes, we color a tomato, she explained. Brett had coded a real-time tally that pinged our phones whenever a staffer confirmed support. By midnight, 3 tomatoes bloomed red. The next morning, Tasha, whose makeover tutorials had quietly passed 1 million views, surprised us with a partnership offer. A cosmetics company would donate $1 for every Blue Heart lipstick sold in December. Rochelle hugged her stepdaughter so hard they both laughed and cried. That single collaboration colored 7 more tomatoes on the board, representatives swayed by constituents tagging them in the viral campaign, A Heart Before Holiday. But momentum attracts clouds. An op-ed in the Savannah Sentinel questioned whether Peer Ladder duplicated existing federal tutoring programs. The piece quoted an anonymous education tech insider, the same company that once threatened us, claiming our merchant-locked voucher cards were ripe for fraud. Kira's phone didn't stop buzzing. She drafted a point-by-point rebuttal, embedded audited ledgers, and posted it alongside a short video of Denise Carter saying, "I used to sing solos to people's guilt. Now I tutor alto sections in algebra." The Sentinel ran Kira's response the next day, and 3 undecided tomatoes turned crimson. A week before the vote, Miss Hattie burst into the courtyard waving an envelope. Habitat's regional office had approved Caleb's site leader placement, Costa Rica departure. January 15th. Caleb tried to look calm, but his eyes gleamed that marsh sunrise gold he gets when callings line up. He pulled me aside. "I don't want to leave you with loose nails," he said. I touched the compass pendant he'd given me. "Rails are tight, son. Go build bridges where we can't." The final lobbying push unfolded in 48 caffeine-soaked hours. Rochelle delivered custom aprons to congressional staffers' break rooms in D.C., each tagged with QR codes leading to resident success stories. Pastor Daniel rallied denominational networks. Lena live-streamed a reading of Malik's journal entry about ladders leaning rather than standing. On December 20th, the House Whip's office called. They projected 280 eyes, 2 more than needed. We didn't sleep. We brewed midnight coffee and listened to the river hush the night. Kira scheduled a 9 a.m. watch party in the gazebo. Brett rigged a projector. Dawn cracked open, soft and spare, and the marsh birds sang as if rehearsed. At exactly 2:04 p.m., the House clerk announced the tally. 279 ayes, 152 nays, Peer Ladder Initiative passed. The gazebo erupted. Rochelle's seamstresses danced with bolts of fabric like victory flags. Malik rang the dinner bell until neighbors cheered across fences. Caleb lifted Kira onto a workbench, both laughing, breathless. I stood back. Compass warm against my skin, watching tomatoes glow red on the digital board until every rectangle was filled. We'd reached the ridge. But as the sun slipped west, Caleb caught my eye, and we both knew bridges never rest. They extend. December 22nd arrived with sky-blue clarity, giving us barely 3 weeks to transform congressional triumph into living, breathing impact. The phone at Pierce Place rang nonstop. Community colleges requesting toolkits, church networks begging for sewing room schematics, international NGOs seeking Blue Heart licensing agreements. Rochelle affixed a sign to the front door. "Hope is hiring, enter boldly." Her first hire was Carlos Ibarra, a soft-spoken parolee who could thread a sarger in 30 seconds and spoke fluent Spanish. Perfect for the Costa Rica project. Second Chance Stitchery expanded from aprons into mosquito net curtains after Carlos shared how dengue season hits villages hard. Rochelle ordered rolls of lightweight mesh, negotiated prices so fierce the supplier called her Hurricane Heart. While the sewing machines hummed, Kira drafted the federal compliance plan: voucher auditing guidelines, tutor training modules, grievance pathways. Brett coded a blockchain-style ledger. Every voucher swipe recorded across mirrored servers in 3 time zones, shutting down critics who'd cried fraud risk. The Lazarus Foundation wired its matching grant within 48 hours of the House vote, effectively doubling year 1 funding. But any seasoned carpenter knows new lumber still needs sanding. 2 state legislators, one from Texas, one from Ohio, announced hearings on federal overreach in education dollars, naming peer ladder in their press releases. Kira refused to react with panic. Instead, she invited both to the Christmas open house as honored guests. Ohio declined. Texas sent an aide who left with a Blue Heart mug and a binder full of impact data. Christmas Eve shimmered. Choir voices rehearsed under the gazebo's cedar ribs, their breath pluming like incense. Caleb spent the morning teaching Malik how to square a miter cut. Malik taught Caleb the Spanish words for hammer, nail, and sunrise. At noon, a delivery truck arrived from Zurich. 50 limited edition Blue Heart compass pendants designed to sell as fundraisers. I opened the first box, fingered the brushed silver Africa outline, and felt tears threaten. The world was wearing our scar like a badge. Evening descended. Open house lanterns bathed the courtyard in honey light. Families Leon once failed walked the grounds, hesitant at first, then laughing as children chased each other under strings of tomato-red bulbs. Denise's choir began, "O Holy Night." By the first fall on your knees, knees indeed bent, some in prayer, some in gratitude, none in shame. In the center of it all stood Caleb, compass pendant catching lantern glow, readying to speak. He tapped a glass. "Tonight isn't about a bill or a trial," he said. "It's about altitude. My dad once told me you can't build a roof until the foundation sets. We just got national funding. That's concrete. Now we raise rafters across oceans." He pointed to Rochelle's seamstresses presenting net curtains, to Malik holding a tray of quiet lightning seedlings bound for Costa Rica, to Kira clutching a rolled-up compliance charter. Applause rolled like tide. Then Caleb did something none expected. He invited Alyssa and Marin to the stage. Alyssa's apology letters had stirred donors. Her ring donation funded a reading corner endowment. Caleb handed her a builder's pencil sharpened on both ends. "Mistakes cut both ways," he said, "but so does purpose." Alyssa accepted, tears reflecting lanterns. Together they planted the first mosquito net curtain on a demo window frame, symbolizing Brazil's pilot site Lazarus had just greenlit. Midnight approached. Fire pits crackled, cocoa steamed, and Rochelle's seam tags on every curtain read, "Mercy needs hinges of honesty in 3 languages." Pastor Daniel led a candle lighting. When he finished, Malik tugged his sleeve, asked permission to speak. The boy raised his candle. Bridges bend, ladders lean. Tonight we say bienvenidos, welcome, dobro pojalovat. The crowd murmured amen in many accents. Christmas morning, Caleb loaded the truck, saws, gloves, compasses, seeds. Rochelle tucked mesh prototypes into crates labeled San Ramon Pilot. Lena filmed a final Courage Corner clip capturing Kira kissing the gazebo post, Brett shutting down the servers with a grin, and me handing Caleb my compass pendant. "Return it when the bridge touches both coasts," I said. He slipped it on, eyes reflecting dawn. We watched his taillights fade down Highway 17, carrying south toward his north. The courtyard quieted except for wind through cedar. Rochelle exhaled. "Think the rails will hold?" I squeezed her hand. "They're cedar strong and grace sealed." This chapter closes not at the end of a path, but at the cusp of another span. Blue Heart stitched into curtains, flapping across hemispheres. compasses pointing out from a wound-made witness, ladders packed in shipping crates ready for new climbers. Somewhere a rural library ramp still sags, waiting for wood. Somewhere Leon contemplates 9 sober Christmases behind bars, perhaps planning his own bridge. And here in Savannah, dawn keeps hammering nails of light across the marsh, inviting anyone with an honest hand to join the build. Railings sanded, seeds pocketed, hearts sky blue. We step onto the next plank, leaving room for travelers we will never meet.